Hi everyone, I'm Kevin from Engineering Politics, and this is the EP Zone. This is the second episode of the EP Zone. As I said in the first one, this one was supposed to be subscriber-only content, but because I made some changes to the format of the show and added some production value to make it more fun for you, I decided to make this free and available for everyone as well. But to make sure you don't miss out on future episodes of the EP Zone, make sure to subscribe to the Engineering Politics Locals community so you don't miss out on the future fun. And make sure to use promo code EPFREE for 3 months free subscriber access when you sign up. Today I'm covering two main topics. Number one, the violence in Portland and President Trump's response to it. And number two, the lessons I learned from a recent novel I read called Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. And then at the end of the show, we go through some rapid-fire topics and have some fun. So, sit down, strap in, and prepare to get wet. Wait, nope, that's not right. Prepare for a good time? Ugh. First one made the second one worse. Whatever. This is Engineering Politics, and you're entering the EP Zone. Hit it, Aaron. Hey everyone, thanks for joining, but it's a pretty packed show today, so we're going to get right into it. Main topic number one, violence against the violent. Unidentified federal agents are going around in unmarked vans, kidnapping peaceful protesters. Wow, what a way to subvert democracy with these evil, fascistic actions. How dare the government do one of its only jobs by protecting the people it governs, although I don't mind the newfound love of federalism. But as per our usual arrangement, there's a ton misreported in this event. Misreport number one, these unmarked agents or unidentified stormtroopers.
What about you guys? We ain't found shit.
As explained by senior CBP official Mark Morgan here.
This is the identification every single one of them has on their uniform. And this is a baseline, clearly marked that they are part of the Customs and Border Protection. The second line of marking is it shows the component within CBP that they're associated with. In this instance, Border Patrol. Clearly police. It's marked on the front and the back, clearly, every single agent. In addition to that, they have a unique identifier. He doesn't have his officers wear name tags because they're being doxxed.
Thanks, Mark. So there you have it. These people are completely identified except for their names, and that's used to protect them and their families. Misreport number two, kidnapping peaceful protesters. These are officials from the Border Patrol Tactical Unit, or BORTAC, part of the unit of the Customs and Border Protection Agency. The claim that they're just kidnapping protesters is just wrong. There was one report by the Washington Post of a guy being detained and released, but that's not really uncommon in law enforcement as long as there's probable cause. These federal agents are there to quench the violence from these awful groups like Antifa, who are basically terrorist organizations. Quick side note, they're not actually officially classified as a terrorist organization at this time, mostly because we must tread lightly when trying to classify American citizens as terrorist groups, just because it does take away some of their rights per the Patriot Act. But also this type of protection from these violent outbreaks we've seen recently is being expanded. The DOJ has Operation Legend, which is named after a 4-year-old child who was killed in his sleep on June 29th in Kansas City. Per the DOJ, Operation Legend is a sustained, systematic, and coordinated law enforcement initiative in which federal law enforcement agencies work in conjunction with state and local law enforcement officials to fight violent crime. The operation was originally started in Kansas City on July 8th and is now expanding to Chicago and Albuquerque. The operation will give assistance to law enforcement, help investigate crime, and provide extra funding to reduce crime. Why is this needed? Because you have these progressive local governments who are either trying to score political points by saying they support some of these causes that these violent uprisings are also saying they support, or they're just trying to be for the people, although they're not for all the people. In fact, they're not for most of the people who are getting their houses and businesses trashed, and people whose lives are in danger. That's why the federal government had to come in and try to protect some of these people, which is, that's like one of the only functions of government, is to protect individual rights and individual liberties, and they're falling way short of that. And that's the saddest part about this whole event. Now, when it comes down to why this all originally came about, why it originally happened, there's something Ben Shapiro brought up in one of his latest podcasts, and something I found interesting. What do we currently believe now? Like, what snapshot in time are we more similar to? Our beliefs in 1776 or our beliefs in 1619? Because one side's trying to say 1619 is the founding of this country, and that's still, our guiding principles right now. That's what we believe in. Like, it's some sort of belief in slavery and inequality that is driving the system right now, instead of 1776, where we have founding principles that we fell way short of at the time, but they were set forth for our progress today. And we see the equality we have today because of our beliefs from 1776. So obviously, I would argue that we're much more closer to there than we are some sort of 1619, which is this awful revisionist history BS project that they're teaching your kids in school. So if we can start out with the same guiding principles, I think we'd avoid all this mess. And this is kind of something we talked about, Truman and I, in one of the latest podcasts, last podcast, I think it's number 16, Hierarchical Inversion, where we talk about the oppressed that are in power. And without diving too deep into it, watch the podcast if you want to know more about it. But it's these people who say they're oppressed, and they don't even realize that they're the ones in power. But when you have these people in power who are constantly claiming that they are fighting the powerful, it's like, standing up to power by saying F you to Donald Trump on Twitter. That's not standing up to any power. Anyone can do that. It's not like the Gestapo is going to come in and take you out of your home. It's actually the other way around. When you stand up against something like BLM, you're now criticized and you can lose your job because you're standing up against the actual power in the country. And these people claim to be oppressed, but are actually the ones who are in power the whole time. And that really makes for a weird, topsy-turvy, hierarchical system that we're finding ourselves in today. So the only way we can get through this is by coming together, and that doesn't include letting our cities burn to the ground. And in order to have a healthy society, we must first start locking the criminals up.
The worst thing about prison was the Dementors. They were flying all over the place, and they were scary, and then they come down and they suck the soul out of your body, and then hi!
All right, this brings us to main topic number 2, lessons from the novel Crime and Punishment. Crime and Punishment is a novel by Fyodor Dostoevsky where it follows around a young man who is consumed by nihilism and completely alienated from society. This is a brilliant novel. I highly recommend you read it yourself. I'm not going to give out any spoilers here, but it basically takes place in the mid-19th century Russia, where this new popular thing called nihilism is consuming the country, where nihilism is basically the complete rejection of societal and moral standards that normally results in a meaningless life. And, I mean, are we not seeing that happen today? And it's like a perfect story for it. But again, I highly recommend the read. But what it does, it follows around the main character, Rajon Romanovich Raskolnikov, or just normally referred to as Raskolnikov. And he just he starts out the novel by committing a serious crime, and the novel proceeds to go and follow him around as he receives his punishment. And this punishment rarely comes in the form of any formal condemnation or an actual criminal trial. It comes in the form of an internal struggle that he has with himself. And that's the important part, because there's this really, really cool concept that I believe it was Jordan Peterson talked about when he talks about his biblical stories and kind of the lessons you learn from them. And one of the big things about just faith in general, at least the Christian faith, is this belief in heaven and hell. And although it's hard for people to prove, and people always focus on the heaven part, it's hard to prove the heaven part, but we all know that hell is a real thing, and hell you can find on earth. And that's when someone is completely consumed by this meaninglessness and possibly awful actions that they've undertaken throughout their lives that have resulted in them sending themselves to hell as they're living on earth. And we've all seen these people on the street who you can tell are just not having a good go of it. And this is what it follows around Raskolnikov as he has this internal struggle, and he deals with the pain of committing this crime. And the brilliant part about Dostoevsky is him introducing these characters that they have different personality traits, but similar enough where you can really see how they interact with the protagonist. And it really brings out the struggle and how other people with different personality traits deal with it. And there's a lot of these people who are extremely flawed, or some people are basically pure evil, that you see how they deal with things, and how they can do bad action and just kind of brush it off. But in the end, it catches up with them. And really, this is a story about the consequences of your actions when you, not even committing a crime, although it's a really bad crime he commits. It's a greater story about the punishment you receive with an internal struggle, and it doesn't even have to come in a formal criminal punishment. And one of the another great scene in the book is a character talking about crime in general. So he refers to crime as a protest against abnormality in a social organization, meaning all crime is just a protest against some sort of injustice. And this is a common theme we hear today. and something that you really, really hear coming from the progressive left because it is a central tenet of their ideology. And, you know, it's basically saying when you see crime happen, it's not because people are incentivized to do some sort of criminal behavior, but it's more so society's push that has brought so many injustices against this individual that they have to resort to crime. And you see that with defending crime in certain communities, high crime communities, where they say, well, they have to resort to it. Well, that's not exactly it. Now, we've incentivized in some cases some of these communities to resort to these types of things by one of them's like and I forgot who brought this one up, but you know, when you have grown up doing something illegal like selling drugs, let's say, and then it's like, okay, I want to clean up my act, I'm gonna get a job. I get a job and I see that my paycheck, like 35% of it's gone because of taxes. It's like, well, I can do this other thing that's completely tax-free, and now I'm incentivized to do crime. So in some cases it is incentivized, especially by government, to do so, but crime is not just some sort of protest against some sort of injustice or inequality. That's not how it works. And the assumption here is if we get rid of all these injustices and all these inequalities, that there will be no crime. But this forgets an extremely important part about a human being, and that's the human condition. It's that we are all flawed creatures, and just by trying to mold our minds and engineer what we do and our thoughts and how we react to certain things, it's not going to work out in the end, and we've seen this play out throughout history a ton of times. So in the end, I think Crime and Punishment should probably be a book that is mandatory reading for most high crime neighborhoods and schools in those neighborhoods. But unfortunately, it's just not in style to have people try to say, well, you have to take responsibility for your actions. So highly recommend the book. I have it here. I ordered this on Amazon. It's like a little pocket-sized book. Full disclosure, I don't normally read these books. I normally listen to the audiobook of it, just because, one, it's kind of not in a different language. It's translated in English, but there's still like some sort of translation things that are a bit difficult for me, at least, to catch on to. So it's always nice to have someone read it out loud. And the guy who did the audiobook for this one's like amazing. So it was like playing out like a movie. So awesome. Highly recommend it. And next on the docket today is Rapid Fire.
Say hello to my little friend.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Number 1, Tucker Carlson, a woman at Fox News, accusing him of one of the most frivolous sexual advancement allegations of all time. He told a woman he's staying alone in the city tonight. This is what happens when you have a corrupt culture. This is what happens. You blare everything up to 11 just because you're going against someone or organization you don't like. This is silly business. Tucker also goes after the New York Times.
The New York Times, a former newspaper.
By saying they're trying to disclose his home residence. I wouldn't put it past them. They're obviously denying this, but this has basically already happened before. And this is, again, what happens when you have a corrupt culture and you're just trying to go after people. You have silly stuff like this. Number 2. The McCloskey's case. Patricia McCloskey, the wife holding the bond gun, was charged with felony count of unlawful use of a weapon. The weapon was later found to be assembled incorrectly and was not able to fire, which is a big deal when it comes to charging a case like this. I guess they assembled the firing pin spring in front of the firing pin, so it doesn't allow the firing pin to hit the primer to discharge the weapon. If anyone knows about guns, they know that this is obviously a way you cannot assemble a gun. Apparently they did this on purpose because Mr. McCloskey, who's a lawyer, was using it in one of his cases and wanted to make sure it didn't fire. Anyways, it doesn't really matter. This is an insane case. This obviously was an overstepping, and even the AG of Missouri said he's going to dismiss this case, because of that whole Second Amendment thing and a bunch of other laws in the state of Missouri that would not allow someone to be charged with something like this. But this is a great example of someone trying to overstep on the Second Amendment, and something we should definitely defend against. Next. Woke baseball. So you have kneeling in baseball now. What the hell? Is this the NFL or something? Like, come on, guys. Follow the NHL standards. Like, just play your sport. Be patriotic. Try to stop pissing all of your fans off. It's really not that hard. And now you have Dr. Fauci throwing out the first pitch of the Nationals game. Just a little bit outside. But this is what happens. Again, woke baseball. We don't need it. We don't want it. Reject it. Next. Wilding out Nick Cannon.
When we talk about the power of melanated people, when we talk about who we really are as guys, and understanding that our melanin is so powerful and it connects us in a way that the reason why they fear black, the reason why they fear is because the lack that they have of it. of when you have a person that has the lack of pigment, the lack of melanin, that they know that they will be annihilated. So therefore, however they got the power, they have the lack of compassion. That melanin comes with compassion. Melanin comes with soul. That we call it soul. We soul brothers and sisters. When they didn't have the power of the sun, that the sun then started to deteriorate them. They're acting out of a deficiency. So therefore, the only way that they can act is evil.
Enough said. He's a dipshit. Next. Chinese Evil on the BBC.
Can you tell us what is happening here?
I cannot see, this video. This is not the first time you show me. I still remember last year. Xinjiang is regarded as the most beautiful place in Xinjiang. There's a Chinese saying, you do not know how big China is.
Ambassador, that is not beautiful coverage, however, is it?
Wow, I give President Donald Trump a hard time, but he had it exactly right on this one.
Donald Trump, don't trust China. China is asshole.
Final word here. We need to start holding China accountable, and maybe shutting down the Chinese consulate in Houston is a great first step. And that's Rapid Fire.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
Well, that's the show. Thank you for watching, and if you're a subscriber, thank you for your support, and if you're not, you're dead to me. I'm just kidding. I love you all. Just make sure to subscribe so you see future podcasts, and make sure to use that promo code. Also, hit me up in the mailbag. You can ask questions. You can make suggestions on future shows for different topics. I'd love to hear from you. Well, that's the end of this train wreck. I'm sure we don't have outro music yet, but Aaron, make sure to get on that. Stupid cardboard cutout. You stupid, stupid, beautiful bastard.